And more
Gordon,
anchors.
and we've had sex and populated.
Yes. Wait, who had sex and populated the table out?
That's an after-hour show.
Pray tell.
Underneath it, the two arrows.
I want to know how you got
Underneath
pregnant
the zero.
because my husband and I have been really trying.
I don't want to know.
Gordon Woodworth is with us, and Gabriel Pabone, and our executive producer. I'm so honored, Aaron Foley. Let's treat him badly.
We should. Let's be really
Lots of big news here tonight.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Tuesday, May 4th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight. The world's first live daily queer evening news show. Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Well, thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ evening news. Whatever happens, you're gonna see it. This evening, we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and let's first up welcome anchor Tony Lima. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Ariana Center, Trans Latina Florida, one of the nation's most important trans rights and services organizations in America. He is a longtime South Florida LGBTQ activist and political advocate, as well as anchor of the world's first new live weekly trans talk show with trans host called Translation. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, Al. So excited. The days are getting closer and closer to the launch of Translation. So hopefully you will watch and let us know what you think about our new show.
I'm going to watch everyone else except maybe one person. I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch.
Now, let's welcome anchor Gordon Woodworth III. He identifies as a pagan and as a genderqueer, non-binary Gen Zer. They are currently a specialist at the nonprofit organization Broward House, providing services for our community impacted by HIV and other chronic health challenges. They are now also running an alt-space VR event series called Pagans in Virtual Reality. Good evening, Gordon.
Thank you, Tony. I hope everyone had a happy Beltane.
Yeah.
Next, let's welcome anchor Darren Lowley, the executive producer of Queer News Tonight.
Hello, hello.
Next, let's welcome anchor Gabriel Pabone. With over 28,000 YouTube subscribers and over 12,000 Instagram followers, he is the owner of the GMP Wear FTM packing underwear, the only affordable underwear for trans and non-binary people. Good evening, Gabriel.
It's good to be here, Al. May the 4th be with everybody today.
I
had to.
Right.
We are the reporters for the Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the Queer News headline. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points for the Queer News for today, Tuesday. May the 4th be with you.
All right, so remember we told you this is live and you get to see everything. Lots of big news for tonight because we, first up, are going to queer up Crazy Like a Fox News. Fox News. Fox News has aired 126 segments on trans student athletes. They could only find 9 nationwide. Fox News has spent the last year warning viewers about the non-existent dangers of transgender student athletes. The channel has spent more time on the topic in just the first months of this year than it did in the past 2 years combined. With 126 segments on the topic since 2019, the channel was only able to reference 9 athletes from around the nation, and more than a third of those segments were about just 2 former high school students who haven't competed in years. None of the athletes dominated their sport, by the way. Additionally, the channel has aired 72 discussions about trans student athletes since January 1st. Not a single story framed transgender people in a positive light. Anchors, host, and guest also referenced the topic another 58 times, according to the watchdog group Media Matters. They added Tucker Carlson Tonight, and by the way, I'm kind of imitating him right now. Tucker Carlson Tonight aired the most discussions at 27. Fox News at Night aired 23. Fox and Friends, including its weekend editions, aired 22 discussions, while Fox and Friends first aired an additional 7. The Ingram Angle aired another 15.
This is more of this conservative media machine pushing forward on news that's not really news. Like, we don't have a problem with transgender athletes attempting to compete against cisgender athletes. This is a made-up problem like we're seeing here in Florida, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, and it just boils my blood to see this. I feel like we all need to share this story with everyone that we know, because we all have family members that are conservative, and my brother and my sister-in-law are telling me constantly that they're so happy that this law is passing, but they don't have a trans child, and they have no stake in the game, and I'm sure there's so many people like that out there. So knowing that this is a reality really should open a lot of eyes.
Yeah, I'm just going to come out and say that trans kids deserve to exist.
Absolutely.
And if they want to participate in sports, they should be able to do that. But I want to point out a couple things about this, because this is clearly the pattern that happens in American politics. For one, what you just said is true. The Republicans are only talking about this to distract from how ineffectual they are as leaders. But also on top of that, I think there's a lot of intersection here between some other issues, especially the issue of race. I think that the reason Fox News is using these two black kids specifically to be the poster children for this issue is because to them, that is another stereotype that they can show their audience. Oh, these are the bad people out here. This is what they've always done. They did it in the 90s when they were talking about welfare. They found a black woman and they called her a welfare queen, and this is what conservative media always does. So I want to point out the overlap there. But on top of all this, the argument is pseudoscience. It's not based in fact, and it's a lie.
You know, I was going to say that, no, you're not speaking like Tucker Carlson, because you're using logic and fact.
Good point.
But more, the next thing that impacts me about this is the people watching. I mean, people are consuming this content, and the people who are consuming this content are our neighbors. And they, they interact with the community, and they impact the trans kid in the school that they interact with. They interact the trans person who's in line with them at the grocery store, and it's just disappointing that he has this type of impact on the community.
Yeah, he definitely has impact.
I think that with everything, we shouldn't be focusing on sports in school, because our kids are still not back in school some places, So I think we just need to focus on what's really important, school and education, rather than something that's extracurricular. Like, I don't think anybody's doing sports right now in high schools or middle school right now.
You know, when we
Very
report this story, and I report the number of times that this is appearing at Fox News, by the way, the Gang of Three that broadcast their 3 hours every night at Fox, they're doing it over and over and over again, and seeding this story. I love magic. And this reminds me of why I love magic, because sleight of hand is a beautiful trick when it's fun and entertaining. But sleight of hand is not valuable when you're a news person and you're just misdirecting people to something to indicate that the Republicans have no good ideas on almost anything. And that's why they're doing it.
With that said, next we queer up trans rights. Florida is about to sign one of the nation's most controversial anti-trans sports bans. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is about to sign a bill that until recently mandated genital exams for trans and cisgender student athletes. DeSantis confirmed to Fox News host Laura Ingraham he plans to sign legislation preventing transgender girls from playing on school sports teams in accordance with their gender identity. Oh yeah, the first-time governor said when asked by a member of the crowd if he would approve the bill. Of the more than 24 states to weigh proposals to limit participation of trans students in athletics this year, Florida legislation has been among the most controversial. An earlier version of the bill DeSantis plans to sign would have required student athletes to undergo exams to determine their biological sex in cases, including genetic testing, where their gender is disputed. The bill was thought to be dead after shelved by a Senate committee last week for lack of time, but it was resurrected late last week as an amendment to an entirely unrelated piece of legislation. Democrats criticized the move as a late-night backroom deal, but it passed anyway, 79-37 in the state House and 23-16 in the Senate, both of which are controlled by Republicans.
Okay, first, Florida. Like, how many times do we have to tell stories about how horrible Florida is? And I live here. So disappointing. But I think the most disappointing part about this is that people supporting this have children who are not trans, who are also going to be impacted by this bill. I mean, this is not just analyzing the genitalia of trans children, but it's basically opening the door to do that to anybody. And does this not sound like pedophilia in any way, shape, or form? I mean,
Yeah.
am I the only one?
What activity for kids involves genitalia that you would need?
So we're gonna check genitalia for at the end of this season to give a participation award.
And that's not even what scientifically determines biological sex. This is all pseudoscience that they've based this whole argument on.
The really scary thing is that this is the first time in 23 years that there's a hate bill of this nature that's aimed to hurt LGBTQ folks, in this case, transgender folks specifically. So my worry is that this is going to open up the floodgates because now it's allowed, and Republicans continue to toe the line. This all came about because there was a conservative convention in Florida several months back where this was one of the top issues, if you will, made-up issues that the Republican Party wanted to see addressed. So like in Florida, it's popped up across the country. It's just sad that it's happening here in our backyard, that it was done in this very nasty way. And this is the way that it works out sometimes in Tallahassee. So right now, what we need to do, since we still have time, is email the governor and ask them to veto this bill, tell him why, get your friends to ask him to veto the bill, send emails, make calls, whatever the case may be. We still have some time.
But more importantly, we have to get the private sector to turn around and react to this.
Oh, it's coming.
Yeah,
A boycott
it's
on
been
Florida is coming.
Yep.
The NCAA has made that absolutely crystal clear. Many businesses across the country. Florida is taking on a tiger that they don't even understand yet that they're taking on. This is very disappointing to me. First off, emailing the governor and asking for the veto. Forever the political advocate optimist you are. Forever.
The more noise that we make, the better it's going to be.
I got it.
He's not
Optimist. And I love your optimism. We reported last week that this bill was dead, and this bill was dead. And how this gets attached to a non-related bill in the middle of the night is an indication of how fervent they want this passed so they can say, this is what we've done for all of you. And my other note to this, which is why this whole thing is so disgusting, the American Medical Association has completely come out universally against this, saying this is not reasonable in terms of the expression of medical fact. It is completely wrong. But we have a hardcore evangelical and hardcore Republicans that science doesn't matter. Health and medical science doesn't matter. So they don't care. So that's it.
Next, we're going to queer up business. Citizen Initiative added to add LGBTQ plus protections to Michigan law backed by business community. A large contingent of Michigan's business community has come out in favor of a ballot initiative that would ask voters to amend Michigan's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to include discrimination protections for both sexual orientation and gender identity. The ballot initiative drive is the work of Fair and Equal Michigan, a coalition of LGBTQ+ leaders, activists, and allies working to secure these rights. Endorsing the efforts are most of the state's Chamber of Commerce. Veronica Horn, president of Saginaw County Chamber, said, quote, "One way we can attract and retain great talent in Michigan is to recognize that talent comes from all walks of life. As a state, we need to make sure that everyone feels welcome here and that they can work in a career without worry of being dismissed because they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. We must compete for this talent, unquote. A long list of businesses and labor unions, including the state's largest, including AFL-CIO, Fiat Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford.
Business needs money, and money talks, right? At the end of the day, it's the business allies that we need arguably the most.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it's necessary, right? Like what they're doing right now in Michigan is what should be happening across the country, because these protections are still not available in almost 30% of this country right now, which is unheard of.
And it's not political. That's
Right.
why we're seeing, I think why we're seeing it in a state like Michigan that's known to be a purple state, you know, can go one way or the other, because gay people existing and trans people existing is not political.
This is an overwhelming majority in support of LGBTQ rights in America and in the Equality Act. Every survey and polling shows between 70 and 80% support. And that includes religious communities. That even includes the majority of the evangelical community. So the people that are behind the anti-LGBTQ or Equality Act are in significant minority, but that doesn't matter because they hope, it's not a question of rights, it is a question of power. They're hoping to use anti-LGBT rights, and unfortunately, mostly focused on trans, to use it as an issue for them to be able to try to take the Senate and the House back in 2022. We must verbally, loudly, and vocally stand up against them and put our reasonableness in front of them at every turn.
Agreed, with our business allies. Next, we queer up entertainment. Ewan McGregor is a glamorous mess in the Halston trailer. Fashion industry surveys that one of the most prized consumers of fashion is LGBTQ. So it will come as no surprise that LGBTQ are also popular in the fashion industry. Netflix wants you to relive another infamously ostentatious party era through the lens of a famed designer. The new limited series, Halston, follows the rise and fall of the famous 1970s designer and Studio 54 staple Roy Halston. Created by playwright Shar White and executive producer Ryan Murphy, of course, Halston premieres on May 14th. Its trailer just dropped with all the classic trappings of a classic Murphy series. Steamy queer relationships, brooding men having emotional outbursts, and glamorous women with killer makeup saving
Sounds
the
like
day.
Saturday night at Tony Lima's.
That's true, I was thinking that.
Ageless man Ewan McGregor plays the Iowa-born designer who made his name in the early 1970s by creating sleek, sophisticated dresses and caftans for the likes of Angelica Houston, Elizabeth Taylor, and Bianca Jagger. Halston, who was eventually ousted from his own brand, is sometimes called America's first celebrity designer.
This is really exciting. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, and it's great that they're chronicling the life of Halston because he was a very interesting person. But I also want to say we could be doing this about a lot of the black and brown icons. I would love to see a biopic of Sylvia Rivera or Marsha P. Johnson. Anyone else. I feel like it's always these same types. I've seen probably 2 to 3 documentaries on Halston, all very interesting, but still stuck in that same white space.
Produced by Ryan Murphy.
No, Ryan Murphy always said the same thing. No.
Ryan Murphy's hand in that. Well, first off, that's a really interesting observation because Ryan Murphy's hand in this makes this possible at FX. If his hand was in it, probably wouldn't happen.
But most importantly, because no one's mentioned it yet, Liza's in this. So we have to watch it for Liza.
Right, all right. I'm like, are you being serious or no? Yes.
No,
sure.
I'm dead serious.
Well, that seals the deal then.
Yeah.
Next, we queer up gay culture. Red Hot is looking for a hunky super ginger cover boy for the 2022 calendar.
You've got my attention.
Red Hot creator and photographer Thomas Knight is on the hunt for a new cover boy for their upcoming 2022 Red Hot calendar. The catch? This iteration is about a specific type of head. Knight said, this time it's all about super gingers. We don't want auburn. We don't want strawberry blonde. We're searching for carrot tops. We want the neon gingers. We want the super gingers. Launched in 2014, Red Hot has made a name for itself, serving up photos of hot men in and out of clothing. The project started as a book, expanded into a traveling exhibition, and keeps adding aspects. Knight's often cast from social media in his mission to rebrand the ginger male stereotype by depicting those with fire-colored locks as sexy and desirable. Interested redheads should send a few images of yourself in natural lighting, of course, to Red Hot's Instagram at RedHot100. The images must clearly show face, hair, and body, yada, yada, yada. For fans, pre-purchase of the calendar and more is already available through Red Hot's Kickstarter campaign.
Why are you
Like
guys
the
all
ginger.
looking at me?
Because we have
Mostly
Why are you all
because you got on your
right
phone
here.
instantaneously at the table as Gabriel was telling the story and you were contacting some website.
I mean, I guess I appreciate that we're trying to see redheaded people as more attractive because we are attractive, but I don't want to be a fetish either. So,
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
My curiosity is, does the red go all the way?
Lord.
Does
Someone
the
quickly
drapery
Please
match the
don't
carpet?
I was going to say, how original of you to ask me if the carpet matches the drapes the moment we mention a redhead story.
Can we move on now?
Are we done? Are we finished?
We're
I don't
done.
know, I think they're sexy.
Yeah. Red Hot, congratulations. I bet this calendar is going to be mammothly successful because it's kind of a secret fetish out there.
That's the problem.
I really want to explore that. Why is that a problem?
Do you think that it is normal when someone says, I like black people only and that's my fetish?
Well, there are a lot of
do you
people.
think
Yeah,
it's
there's a lot.
abnormal?
I'm out.
Do you
I
think
know.
it's abnormal that people like blue eyes?
I think it's weird to find a specific trait like that and then that's the sole reason.
By the
you're
way, did
attracted
y'all
to this
know
person.
that Tony Lima was a leading contender of the Bears We Love in Hot Spots magazine? That's a fetish. It's the same kind of
I
thing.
was.
I mean-
I am.
You
I
continue
love that
to
you're
be.
using me to break this up.
Yes.
Yes, yes, I was.
I'm
and I
using
need
you
hotspots
to-
for
It's
that.
not, I don't want, it is not the same comparison because it's a different cultural context, obviously, but I'm pointing it out because I don't want to be a fetish either because I've definitely been hit on Grindr and had guys tell me they're interested in me only for that, and it's really weird and creepy to me, so.
Yeah, all right. Well,
hear you.
you apparently are not the consumer, but there are many consumers out there.
I'd say if you got it, flaunt it.
Flaunt it. That's
you
right.
go.
And coming from
Well,
you,
I am
that's
Coming
doing
from me,
that.
exactly.
all right.
And next we're going to?
Yeah. Next week we're up. Thank you for saving me, by the way. Next week we're up LGBTQ news. Revry's queer-centric news program, Culture Q, premieres this week. Watch this.
I'm Andy Lawani.
And I'm Shira Lazar. We're your hosts for Revry's new series, Culture Q.
Join us every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for the latest in LGBTQIA+ news, politics, pop culture, and more.
We'll see you right here at the intersection of queer culture, only on Revry.
Well, Revry Network will premiere its first original queer-centric news series, Culture Q, this Thursday. The weekly series promises a mix of pop culture, entertainment, politics, and lifestyle coverage of importance to the LGBTQ plus community. It's hosted by digital news influencers Shira Lazar and Andy Lawani of What's Trending, and will feature Deshaun Wesley of HBO Max's legendary MC as its first guest. The show will air at 8 p.m. Eastern. Revry CEO Damien Pellisonio, I apologize, I mispronounced that, said, quote, Culture Q represents an opportunity to celebrate LGBTQ culture and highlight the stories that matter to our community. Revry is committed to inspiring exploration of authentic LGBTQ stories, end quote. Lazar said, quote, it's more important than ever before to report LGBTQ stories consistently to audiences as we continue the fight for rights and equality across the country, end quote. At Queer News Tonight, we couldn't agree more with you, and we wish Culture Q a very successful launch and encourage our viewers to watch.
Representation matters. So the more programming like this that we have on varying channels and platforms, amen. I welcome it.
Yeah.
And as the executive producer of this queer news show, I can only say that imitation is the best form of flattery. So welcome to the party.
Hopefully they won't put us out of business, but I hope that we can see more of this because I'm tired of looking at boring potato people tell me news that I don't care about.
Wow. Well, we need more gingers then. No, I'm sorry. Rip the bandage, the bandage off the womb. You know what I think is great about this is, and I thought this, as the oldest guy at the table, here, television tried to do something. You remember Logo Television? Logo Television is where the Golden Girls reruns go to die, and that's all it is. It's very hard to find good LGBTQ programming, digital programming. Sometimes we're criticized of having short attention spans, and news can be an area that is vitally important but difficult to compete for because it's not a 1-minute TikTok. But we can't be a 1-minute TikTok if we desire to be informed and aware of what's going on in our very critically important world. And where did we learn that? In the last 4 years under President Trump. So news and information is important, and that's why I cheer Culture Q. We're glad to have you because we need you in our LGBTQ community.
Very true.
Next, we queer up religion. Young Catholics deserting church in droves to protest same-sex unions ban. If Belgium is any example, the Catholic Church is showing signs of problems growing with the church's news announcements surrounding LGBTQ+. Belgium News reports around 700 young people have formally left the Catholic Church in that country since the Vatican banned blessings for same-sex couples. Johan Boni, Bishop of Antwerp, said this week that many of their members pulled away from the Catholic Church after the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith issued its controversial rules around blessings for same-sex couples in March. In an explanatory note, the Vatican's Orthodoxy Office told church members that same-sex couples must not be given blessings, as doing so would be an affront to God. Boni added that an additional 2,000 have canceled their baptismal registrations in Belgium's Catholic stronghold. Boni said, quote, speaking at a webinar, he said there was a dramatic backlash from mainly straight people in his diocese who felt that the Catholic Church's regressive guidance was a step too far.
Well, obviously we can't look to an organization that's murdered its way across the world and helped colonize the world as the nexus for our morality. But I do want to speak on this a little bit as a person who has been personally victimized by the Catholic Church since I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I'm a pagan, having most of my religion and culture destroyed specifically because of the Catholic Church. I do want to point out a couple things. We can't change the history of the church, but we can deal with the present. And I do think that Catholics need to realize this has got to change. You have to force, and I know there's a lot of liberals within the Catholic Church too. It's hard to make a blanket statement about this. Really, it's a culture that exists. But we do need to tell them, you have to push this church to change. And the church has to understand, if you don't change, this is going to be the end for your organization, period. And I want to encourage liberal Catholics to leave the church. Leave the church. Divest from them. They're a business just like anything else. And there are other churches that don't preach hate from the pulpit that you could be a member of, including the one we're sitting in right now, Sunshine Cathedral, or churches like the Unitarian Universalist Church, or even...
I'm gonna interrupt you on, unfortunately, any other thoughts about the Catholic Church? What did...
Is there a leader, or is this just something where it was a mass exodus in general?
It is a popular, just as Gordon said, it's a popular move, especially among younger people. Younger people, whether they identify as LGBTQ+ or straight, are leaving this church, the Catholic Church, and other churches, religions that are showing traditional discriminatory patterns, and they're saying we're not going to accept that. Gordon's
fantastic.
attitude is growing significantly. I want to point out to the Catholic Church that with a Gordon or with a Gabriel, whether you participate in church or not, you are like the little Dutch boy story holding your finger in the dike. You cannot do it forever. The Catholic Church cannot stand up to what is happening in the world. And Gordon's point is really good on that you are either going to change or you're going to die. And do it quicker rather than later, because the Pope and the Catholic Church's declaration of we are a sin and therefore cannot be blessed in the eyes of God is the exact same philosophy of Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell. And so you're in the same class as those two individuals. And I would say to the Pope and the Catholic Church, that is not a class that you should be encouraged to be associated with.
Plus, Jesus never talked about this.
We're going to move on to South Florida news.
Next, we're going to queer up South Florida. Broward House says there's still time to make a difference. Broward House's Dining Out for Life has one last request for LGBTQ support. You can make a donation on the website to be entered for an exciting raffle prizes. The traditional Dining Out for Life was dramatically changed in 2020 because of COVID-19. In 2021, restaurants took a major hit, so the traditional fundraiser also suffered. So Queer News Tonight encourages you to go to browardhouse.org to participate in their final 2021 Dining Out for Life campaign by making a donation. Broward House provides life-saving services to the LGBTQ community and deserves your support.
You know, Al, you say it all the time. In pandemic, it is the not-for-profits and the 501c3s that have been hit the hardest. So anything we can do. You and I went out on the Dining Out for Life. We had a great experience at Bona. And if I did not realize that there was more time to do this, and I encourage everybody to continue to participate. It's a good move.
All right, well, let's move on to world news.
Okay. Next, we queer up the world. Drag Race UK stars evacuated after sick bomb hoax at London's Heaven nightclub. Drag Race UK stars were evacuated from London's Heaven nightclub yesterday afternoon after someone made a bomb threat. The Vivienne, Kia Coffee, and Veronica Green were rehearsing for the Drag Queens Pop Tour alongside the fourth drag queen, Shania Payne, when police arrived and evacuated the premises. Owner Jerry Joseph said he had to walk around the venue with police officers and sniffer dogs while Charing Cross Station, Villiers Street, and Craven Street were evacuated. The nightclub's owners hit out at the person behind the hoax, branding them a, quote, sick individual, end quote. Tia Coffey said the bomb threat was quote, a terrifying experience. We're all safe and shaken up, and thanks fans for their kind messages. On her Instagram stories, the Vivienne thanked the police for their swift action on Monday. The Drag Race UK Season 1 winner said the incident was, quote, very scary, adding, it's such a shame after lockdown and everybody dying to get back to work and back on stage, we're finally there, finally rehearsing for stuff, and somebody decided to do this horrible hoax prank. Whoever it was, shame on you, end quote. Drag Race UK icons were evacuated after a suspicious item was found.
I'm just wondering why I'm not the one reporting this story, because I thought contractually I was the RuPaul's Drag Race, but apparently not. No, but I think to the point of the story, right? We have been in seclusion for so long. These people that work in the entertainment industry, specifically within this vein, bartenders and such, have suffered a lot. People haven't been working. So it is a shame that finally things are up and running and this happens, right? So we need to support, especially here in South Florida, all of our local businesses, the bars, go see the drag shows, go to the drag brunches. We have to support our people.
And the show must go on. And I can't think of a better way to, bite your thumb at the person that did the fake bomb threat than by going and having the show and being out there and being proud.
Death dropping in the middle of the bar.
Exactly.
I'm glad that this turns out to be nothing, a hoax. I have some mixed feelings about it, though, because I have never With all due respect to my friend Tony Lima, I'm the RuPaul's Drag Race guy at the table.
Wow.
And
The shade. I need a shade button.
I have never. Yeah, there's
He
the
hates when I
bell.
do that. He
Yeah,
hates when
Just
I do
don't
that.
let her take you on a cruise.
yeah. The situation I have never reported on of or never heard of that a bomb threat would affect RuPaul's Drag Race queens. I've been involved in so many events. I wondered what my reaction would be on a bomb threat. The one positive thing is it is nice that our entire community is just like the broad community. We get everything today, the good and the bad. So there's much more integration of our community than there was in the past, because we would have never thought of something like this.
There's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Very true, Al. Next, we queer up travel. Travel industry titans support LGBTQ plus rights and the Equality Act. One of the industries that has been most supportive of LGBTQ is the travel industry. So it comes as no surprise, but likely much gratitude that the tourism industry is loudly supporting LGBTQ plus civil rights and the Equality Act. Hundreds of the world's largest travel brands, including every U.S. airline, every major hotel company, the Walt Disney Company, the rideshare companies of Uber and Lyft, every major casino company in America, and more. The companies put out thousands of press releases and social media statements on LGBTQ plus rights must be guaranteed through legislation. The only question is if they can convince Republicans.
I think we should stop trying to convince Republicans and just stop electing them. Let's vote for the person that's running against them, because clearly they are the problem. But I also wanted to say, I think it's important to talk about travel and international business, especially when we have a Democratic administration that's talking about spreading LGBTQ rights abroad. Business is how you do that. We can't legislate in other countries, but we can affect the private sector, and we need to put our money toward our values.
That's an excellent point. Also, back to the earlier point of what's happening in Florida right now, business helps drive the legislative agenda everywhere.
Everywhere.
So if we
Money
put
talks.
pressure on business, we help to affect positive change for all of us. So just another note to your point earlier, and I didn't mention this before, but here in Florida, the Miami Heat, the Miami Dolphins, even Ryder is getting behind the need to not have a trans ban. And like this with the Equality Act, it's very important for businesses to come out, step up, and support us all.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Well, that is
yes.
our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Tony?
Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we have reported on coronavirus on every news broadcast since January 6, 2020. Tonight, we report the devastating effect coronavirus has had on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in total cases and deaths.
But we also provide hope of a new light at the end of this long tunnel. As of tonight, more than 2,300,000 LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19. We have watched the greatest single-year LGBTQ health crisis of our lifetimes. More than 41,000 LGBTQ Americans have died from coronavirus. But the news is improving, because as of today, more than 246 million vaccinations have been administered in the U.S. Thank you, Joe Biden.
That is our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We are broadcasting from a permanent set at Sunshine and supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
I'm Nick Matheny from the University of Miami, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set an amazing queer church campus possible. Finally, we thank our Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when you're visiting sunny South Florida.
Welcome to Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. For nearly a year, this segment has been unique in America, answering your LGBTQ community questions about our unique health needs. We are proud to have Queer News Tonight health anchor, Dr. Howard Grossman.
He's an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment and was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He is a nationally recognized medical expert and proud member of our LGBTQ community.
Before we move to this week's questions, good evening, Dr. Grossman. We wanted to ask you about your thoughts over what you saw this week in health news in our community. What did you think about what you saw this week?
Well, I think the two big stories this week really seem to be what's going on in India, and we have to remember that it is strongly affecting the LGBTQ community in India. The friends that I have there say people are dying in the streets. People are having to pay $1,000 for a cylinder of oxygen. And the equipment that is being sent now that arrived in India the last couple of days from the US and Germany and other countries is sitting on an airfield and not getting distributed. It's a real total failure of the government in India, which is unfortunate. But the LGBTQ community is really adversely affected there, as always in India. I think the other big story, of course, is one we're going to talk about, which is Governor DeSantis, basically deciding the epidemic is over and putting politics over health.
Yeah, let's in fact let's frame that in one of the questions we have. And Darren, let's start with you.
Sure. Several states, including New York and Florida, are lifting COVID restrictions. Is it too early?
Well, I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and they're not really lifting all COVID restrictions. Come July 1st, they're opening much more. But I can tell you, if you go to New York and you see people who lived through the worst of the pandemic there, they're really suffering from post-traumatic stress. Friends that I was with, was the first time that they had been in a restaurant, period, but they were outside. They were good, no way they were going to eat inside, even though they've been vaccinated. So, that's a very different situation, and New York is following the recommendations of the science community. Florida and Texas, but Florida especially, is basically ignoring the science. Our governor, our legislature passed a law that goes into effect on July 1st that restricts local ordinances from emergency powers if they're more than 7 days. They can be extended up to 42 days, but then it expires, and the governor can unilaterally void any emergency declarations. So if you had an outbreak of tuberculosis or measles or Ebola, God forbid, and there was an emergency lockdown, the governor could just say, "Oh no, we don't need that." And with this governor, you just don't know what he'll do. So that's where it was. And then yesterday, the governor decided to jump the shark and make an executive order putting all that into effect immediately and voiding all the local laws. Fortunately, private organizations can still decide for themselves what they need to do, but he has really empowered the anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. They're all running around now saying that it's if people don't want to get COVID, then they should wear masks themselves, but they don't need to. Those people don't need to wear masks. And to remind your viewers, it's great if you have no fear of this. That's fine. If you get sick and die, fine. But that's not what really the problem is. And the problem is that the more the virus is allowed to replicate in people, the more chances that it will that will develop some form of the virus that is resistant to the vaccines we have. You know, if you look at HIV, most mutations in HIV make the virus less fit, it grows less well. But with this virus, we've already seen that mutations have made the virus more virulent, make people sicker, it's attacking younger people, and, you know, it's all we need is to let it keep doing this.
Yeah, and that is a dark summary of what's going on.
But Al, I was actually reminded today, somebody sent me a cartoon from 1930 when the smallpox vaccine was first coming out. Exactly the same characters, the anti-vaxxers, the religious nuts, the people who are anti-everything. They had all these characters lined up jumping off a cliff into a lake of smallpox. So the same arguments were being made in 1930 that we're hearing now. So I posted back, I said, idiocy is timeless.
Idiocy is timeless.
I saw that fewer people are getting the COVID vaccine now. Are enough people vaccinated?
No, not even close. So in Florida in general, I think we're about 27 or 28% of people have had at least one vaccine. In Broward County, we're at 29%. Herd immunity is now felt to not even be close until you get over 80%. So these people that are refusing the vaccine are just guaranteeing this thing is going to continue.
You know, in related news to your comments there, Howard, I read over the weekend that Saturday's vaccinations in America were only 33% of what they were 1 month ago. We were vaccinating 3 million a day. Saturday we vaccinated 1 million Americans. Where is this going in terms of the number of people that are choosing to be vaccinated versus not vaccinated?
Well, if you notice this morning, the Biden administration announced an initiative to really place vaccines in the hands of rural doctors. So these, you know, where people are going to trust their local doctor. So they really are looking to find ways to convince people that this is important. Mm-hmm. And the rural areas are ones, I mean, those are people who generally live fairly isolated lives compared to people who live in the middle of the city. And, you know, they also probably are in a Fox News bubble. And they forget that all the Fox News people have been vaccinated. But they, you know, but they don't trust all this. So perhaps they will trust their private doctor.
Tremendous hypocrisy, isn't it? I watched Tucker Carlson last night. I couldn't find a train wreck, so I watched Tucker. And and it was interesting because he railed on vaccination through the entire show, but he's been vaccinated.
And, of course, I heard he said masks don't work.
Yeah,
if they work, why are we getting more people who are infected?
Yeah, exactly. All right, and we have another question, Tony.
Hi, Dr. Grossman. You were talking about the situation in India earlier. Could the USA get that bad?
Well, you know, I mean, India has very poor healthcare infrastructure. I mean, if you've got money, they have fantastic hospitals. You just go in with your credit card. Every time you get a test done, you give them your credit card. But most, you know, it's a very poor country for many people. And people in the ghettos live on top of each other with poor sanitation. And so, no, I don't think that we'll get to there. The scary part about India, though, is that it's an incubator. You have, you know, 1 billion people, only a few tens of thousands who've been vaccinated. And so this virus is allowed to go wild. And again, as we said, the chances of it producing some very virulent mutant they just go up exponentially. And the world is a connected place. I mean, right now, travel from India is shut down. You're not going to be able to do that forever. And, you know, any kind of variant is going to spread. So what happens in India is important for us to know about.
Very interesting. Well, that is tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. Next week, Howard, when we talk, we're going to have great news, or we're going to talk about dinner or what's going on in the bars or something, because we're not, let's not talk about India next week. Our minds are there for sure. We're watching what's going on there for sure. Our hearts and go out to them.
And remember, Al, when we're talking about two things going on now. We talked about that last week. You have people who are vaccinated who actually can open their lives again, and people who are not vaccinated who are getting sick in still high numbers even in this country. So that's confusing to a lot of people. It's not the vaccinated people getting sick, it's the unvaccinated ones.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, we remind you that we're here every Tuesday with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your questions. Do you need medical assistance? Well, we're the LGBTQ community, and of course the answer is yes. We encourage you to contact Midway Specialty Care Center with 10 locations in Florida, and especially Dr. Howard Grossman. He and I have been together now over a year doing this every single week. He is here in Wilton Manors, and he serves all across South Florida. So thank you again tonight, Howard, for being with us.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Grossman.
all.
All right.
Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you? Then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, and share this news with your friends and family. Post this broadcast in the many groups that you are a member of. Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ television news video news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines, and we need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. That is the passion of Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight.
Well, I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Tony Lima, Gordon Woodworth III, Darren Lowley, and Gabriel Pavone, we will see you daily, and that means tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Good night.